everyone. On behalf of CATS, Center for Advancement of Traditional Building Technology and Skills, I welcome all the speakers and each one of you to the special Place Story session of Festival of Places 2020, jointly hosted by Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, IGNCA New Delhi, and CATS. CATS is a not-for-profit organization working in the area of heritage conservation, management, and advocacy since 2001. We have been working with a vision to highlight local heritage assets, empower local communities, and make heritage conservation participatory and sustainable. An effort such as ours requires technical and financial assistance as well as patronage. You can support and participate in our multiple initiatives and programs by volunteering your skills and contributing financially. Your donation, however small, can help us together contribute to the conservation and protection of our fast disappearing, unprotected, and hitherto unknown heritage assets. Donations to CATS entitles donors to get tax exemption under Section 80G of the IT Act 1961. For volunteering your skills for our initiative, please write to us at info@catsindia.org. You can also support us by buying our heritage souvenirs that raise awareness about unprotected heritage assets in our cities and towns. Do visit Araish, the Heritage Craft Collection, on our website, www.indiaheritagehub.org. We at CATS feel very strongly about the dismal state of public spaces in our cities and firmly believe change in the way we think, talk, and use public spaces can only begin at the grassroots by creatively engaging people with places and empowering them to make a difference to the places and spaces around. The Festival of Places, an initiative by CATS, is an idea born out of the spirit of volunteerism to come together, collaborate, co-create, and celebrate places that nurture health, happiness, and foster community living. The Festival of Places aims to bring people, places, and memories and their interrelationships at the forefront of public discussion. It envisions to investigate places, the people who inhabit them, the collective and the individual memories that are integral to places, and present them in a new way to leverage discussions on the future of public spaces. The festival provides an opportunity to people for sharing their personal narratives. Moreover, the festival aims to help discover the much overlooked human dimension of places. The main highlight of the festival this year is Place Stories, a series of online storytelling sessions that will help understand the hidden dimensions, multiple interpretations, and varied memories associated with places, highlighting their distinct characteristics as well as unraveling the bond that people had with them, a connection that lived through their experiences. Special Place Story Sessions is a series of interesting storytelling sessions by subject experts from diverse fields. These sessions focused on public spaces have been planned around 4 pertinent themes. The theme for the Special Place Stories Session 4 is Place Stories, creating epistolary and visual narratives of public spaces. Public spaces have a distinct identity and character that is governed by several parameters and qualifies them as places. Every public space has different uses and means different things to different people. Each individual experiences spaces differently, and therefore how public spaces are perceived by different sections of the society across different age groups, class, caste, and gender varies greatly. Based on these subjective perceptions of public spaces, people create their own experiences and memories of those spaces. Public spaces therefore have embedded multiple narratives, which often get left out while planning and designing intervention in these public spaces. This session will explore how epistolary and visual narratives can be created, capturing the different and often contrasting perceptions and experiences of public spaces. How can they help in expanding our understanding of public spaces and inform interventions in such places? We are happy to have with us this evening some very interesting speakers with equally interesting professional backgrounds. Dr. Kaushik Ghosh is imaging scientist, photographer, and graphic designer at Storyshala, interweaving visual and narrative communication. Mr. Jitin Arora is head DICE VFS School of Entertainment Arts. Ms. Deepti Pant is chief mentor, Truth School and Institute of Innovation and Storytelling. After the Play Stories by our speakers, we will open the session for questions and answers. Please write the questions in the chat box and we will take them one by one. Do let us know if you wish to ask the questions personally. We begin with the Play Story by Dr. Kaushik Ghosh. Dr. Kaushik Ghosh is an independent documentary photographer based in Kolkata. He is specially trained in medical, scientific, and humanitarian photography. Born into a family of physicians and surgeons, Kaushik is formally trained both in medicine and visual arts. Kaushik completed his medical graduation from University of Calcutta. He is the first Indian photographer who has been awarded the Graduate Imaging Scientist GIS ARPS qualification by the Royal Photographic Society of Great Britain. He is also the first Indian representative in the prestigious Committee of Medical Group of the Royal Photographic Society of Great Britain, and also the overseas member of International Visual Sociology Association. Kaushik is the pioneer in introducing Asia's first graduation course in medical and scientific photography at Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. From 2014 to 2018, he was instrumental in designing, developing, and implementing the course at PGIMER, Chandigarh. In 2019, his solo photographic exhibition at Delhi, Behind the Scenes in Child Health, was the first of its kind exhibition on child health, immunization, and public health. It was organized by Global Health Strategies, John Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, PGI Chandigarh, and Child Health Foundation of India. He was a commissioned photographer and consulting designer of historic coffee table book, Rotavirus Vaccine, The India Story, and also Bihar's Story of Routine Immunization. Apart from his assignments, Kaushik has been working on his personal project of researching, documenting, and archiving the origins as well as historic political ramifications of structured medical practice since its embryonic age of development in India, which originated in his hometown. He's a humanist and unashamedly quirky who loves to tread down the path not taken. I would now like to invite Dr. Kaushik Ghosh to share with us his play story titled Untitled The Narrative. Kaushik, you will have to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Urvashi, for giving me such an opportunity, though I'm not a speaker at all. In fact, that's not my forte, but yeah, probably since 2012, the association is now going on continuing with Urvashi and CATS almost. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Well, fine. Firstly, I should, declare that the public spaces where actually Urvashi is working on, I actually don't have such kind of any kind of experience or work in that particular sector. But yes, I'm largely working on the public health, documenting public health visually, or kind of some of my personal projects on of course, my own area of medicine and public health. So to begin with, I think that, before I share my own, a couple of work with you, I think that there should be a kind of a, introduction, which I perceive it's a very personal kind of thing, which I think that should be shared with you. Uh, Photography is now almost like, that began to democratize all over the world after the digital innovation. It's not anymore a kind of a 35 millimeter film or those kind of things. So of course, my experience can be different with the other photographers, but amalgamating my formal education of medicine with photography, it's a different kind of experience for me, and I try to bring out those kind of things in front of the public for the government and all other non-government organizations. So to begin with, I should say that as Urvashi, when Urvashi sent me this particular, that poster, what caught my eyes are the two words. These are the, epistolary and the narrative. Because epistolary, as per the dictionary meaning, is the kind of a literary work in the form of letters. And narrative historically is kind of, considered always in the textual form that began in this textual form, or in a kind of, started with a kind of oral history or some kind of thing. So if I'm considering both as writing with a pen and pencil, then in 1839, there's a guy named, John Herschel, who coined the term photography. So that first from its Greek origin, that is called the, as writing with light, rather than the common perception of drawing with light. So in that respect, photography is very closely resembles with writing. And as for my experience is concerned, I should say that where narrative exists, fiction is never far behind in narrative. Because, narrative as a part of the complexity science. A narrative is such a complex system that, encompasses not only intentional meaning of the author or the unintentional interpretation of the audience, but also a range of spaces of possibilities of the story to unfold otherwise, both in space and in time. So, yeah, and of course, Urvashi's in this particular session, or the whole perspective of this discussion or the going on, which is that is on the some kind of space which is there. Now, in a photograph regarding the time, what I must tell that as a documentarian, that photography is largely different with the other kind of visual arts, because when we are using the camera as a tool and when we press the shutter, it's always a kind of a realistic form which you capture. So whether it is an art or not, that is always been a debatable discussion. But we can't do anything without the camera. That is for sure. And for a photograph, when we are talking about a time, that a photograph tells us something about a future. Before you press the shutter and composing the frame, uh, but the future, that is itself in the photograph now in the past. Once you press the shutter, immediately, right? So technically there is no present in a photograph. So one example that came in my mind that I should tell, that uh, uh, in our schools we were told that you can't bathe twice in the same river, because if I'm considering the flow of the river as a time, the moment you take a dip and you just came up, the water already passed away, and when you take the second dip, it's a different water body. So it's kind of a flow of time that we are capturing through photographs. So that is the difference between the photography and other visual form. So, and for me, visual narrative is more about the behavior than the content, because it implies a personal response uh, to the matter exposed. And this is more subjective presentation or interpretation. And that's why I'm always saying that we are not seeing a photograph, rather we are reading the photograph, where probably a kind of, that's of course a different kind of context of discussion. That's a visual literacy or something like that. That's always come to this part. So here, that today, I was literally very, that Urvashi knows that I was traveling extensively because of the COVID-19, that kind of vaccine trials and all these things. So I just came back a couple of hours back and I started, compiling two particular presentations, because what I told you that, in that complex system of the narrative, there are two particular parts. One is the intentional meaning of the author as a part of the narrative. And other one is the unintentional interpretation of the audience. So one, what the photographer tells you, audience, a photograph, some kind of text, and the photographer directing the audience to understand what is there in the photograph, or what he or she wants to tell. And the second part of narrative is that where there will be only the images, where the audience will only interpret the, through the imaginary factor or the kind of thing, the audience will only, interpret those things. So I'm sharing this, my screen with you. Yep. Just a moment, my Mac is not allowing me. Yep. Okay. Share screen. Is my screen is, are you able to see the screen?
Yeah, your screen is visible.
It's visible, right? Okay. So the first part is, of course, the where I am directing the audience to understand that what I want to tell, I want to convey. So this is the first, it's a part of a, that assignment project, which is currently going on. So I can't show you many photographs. So there are a few photographs which I want to tell you about, that this public toilets inequality and urinary tract infection. Uh, this is the image which I have chosen to as an opening photograph, because this is basically a sari that is, that meant for drying up in the year. And there are three women standing behind, whose shadows are coming up. So what I actually, perceived during my travel, it's a kind of, understanding that I have, that the first image on the left, that was a couple of years back when I first encountered this one, that I completed my assignment, and I was accompanied with one of my colleague, uh, a woman, a female colleague was accompanying me. And on the highway, I just, that have some stop, and, that went for, my bladder was full, and I just happily, went to the place, and uh, the maturation happened, and all those things. The moment I came back to the car, my colleague asked me, Dr. Ghosh, is there any toilet for the females? And that was the NH1, National Highway 1. And that immediately struck my mind, that I was kind of, that ashamed that, and we have to travel then next almost 7 hours. Then I was completely, that bewildered and ashamed, that, well, fine, that what I have done, that, and this lady will be with me for the next 6.5 hours or 7 hours. So how could she manage this thing? And on the right, there is an image. You can see that there is a woman with a, a, a painting, a drawing of the female reproductive system, and it's a kind of a, that gown, or, the kitchen towel, or kind of a thing. That also one of the part, that when people are traveling, especially the females are traveling, they have a physiological, and as a medical graduate, I do understand completely that there is a physiological phenomenon that is very normal with a female menstruation. So so if she wants to change, where she needs to go, there is nothing. So that's a part of a kind of an, that discovering, or the, that public place, or you can say that a realization for me, that I need to do something with if at least I can, that approach and make some kind of visual work on this. uh, Probably that will create some kind of impact. So the next two images are two different kind of, that this couple of images were taken in a very crowded Ganga Sagar fair, that is the next Kumbh that is happening in West Bengal. The left one is a hand of women, which is directing towards a bio toilet, where a gentleman wearing a, that entering into this bathroom, directing to this particular toilet to go there. And, that's probably the direction you need to go, because there are a lot of, that places where the men, especially the men, are going to urinate openly, though there are almost 17,000 bio toilets installed. So this woman is directing us, the male counterparts, that there is a toilet and go. And on the right hand side, you will see that there is a toilet where there's that if we read the photograph, this is a gents, meant for the gents toilet, but there are three women who are standing, and we're going, that using that particular toilet, and a gentleman is going other side of the, gents toilet. So so whatever, there must be some kind of, that we are telling, we are we are providing a lot of toilets, public toilets to you, but probably there are some kind of, that misinterpretation, or there is an absence of a kind of signage, because most of the people who are visiting this kind of fairs are not literate. So we are probably very much satisfied. Well, fine, that install 17,000 bio toilets for everyone, that everyone can use it. But probably there is some kind of gap which is there. So this is a kind of, that with these 5 photographs, I'm just telling you that what a kind of interpretation which I want to tell that to the public, okay, or you can say per se to the government or something like that, uh, as a kind of, you can say, the individual interpreter or the author. Now, my second word is, of course, I'll not tell anyone that to anything, and I'll be completely silent. And that is my work on the unintentional interpretation of the audience. So that is the C19 and the mental space. And this is, I'm documenting since the first day of the lockdown, which happened, and it's still going on. But this is a kind of a, you can say, a kind of a silent movie kind of a thing, which is absolutely open for interpretation to the audience. So I'm going on one by one.
So you're on mute.
Sorry, Urvashi, I think that the internet in between got disrupted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm again sharing the screen. So, when I started feeling, that this all those saying that this is my chair, and that kind of a thing, that I'm amazed. I mean, these are the doors in front of me or surrounding me, where I'm sitting, amazed, a place which is, that something very surreal. This is me and my synapses, and it was kind of a, that everyone in this country or the world is kind of a, that uh, a complex situation, thinking something, and I'm just kind of seeing from my own individual perspective. It was, I have never seen such kind of, uh, selfish situation ever in my time. People are rushing to get their own rations without thinking about others. Uh, they're kind of a people who are, I've never seen those people, that they are my neighbors. going to the ATM and bring out the money as much as possible from the ATM without thinking that what about the person who is standing behind me? He will not get anything. Okay. So it was a nerve-wracking thing for me when I was seeing those, that small verticals, the shadowing part of my synapses. Okay. Calcutta is a part where, the kind of a cosmopolitan area where I have seen this. They are my neighbors, my Tangra or the Chinatown people. My father has had probably some thousands of patients from this, that Chinese community. I have seen them while I was growing up, but suddenly the whole city become, that against a community. They are the Chinese. They bring this thing here. Okay. And they are one of the people who brought the dentistry in the city, those who brought shoemaking, the leather, finest leather in the city. And these people are, that people, one of the finest people who are expert in the, drying the clothes, and if you closely see this in this photograph, there is a signage in between. This is a school, that is the National Hindi School. So that is the diversity of a city that we have. But that moment, the entire city is probably, there is a, that rage or aggression against this community. And on the right, we have seen what is happening. These are the clothes. And on my right, there are also the clothes in the form of masks. We are drying up them. We are hanging them up. Miles after miles. And that's probably the kind of, that situation we have faced. Now, this is the outside my home and inside my home. That's my space. This lizard is a resident of my, that home for many days. And suddenly I close the window and ask them to leave outside. I don't want to enter you inside. So he's now seeing from outside, from this opaque glass to inside. And there is a chase which is going on, kind of a political, kind of a thing, or the, chase as a factor of a game. It's a kind of a move that we are planning by ourselves, that whom to come, whom to allow to come and not to come, or, that where to go, whom to speak, whom not to speak. It's all about calculations were going on. Rooftop became our park. Rooftop became our a kind of a, that gateway of seeing the sky. And that's the place of, or the space for a kind of a, breathe. And then the entire education system stalled. And when my son just, that wrote the word go, so I asked him the what to go. So he told me that Corona, go. So he pasted it in his, that wardrobe, and, make this that drawing on with the chalk and everything. So that, kind of a very complex kind of a thing which is going on with their minds also. And this is the last for this, but there are a lot. We have lost 1,50,000 citizens of this country, including my father. I lost my father on 10th of August. Not the most reputed of Calcutta, of, that find a bed for him to admit him in the hospital for 4 months. So this is not just his hand. This is the hand of those, probably 1,50,000 or more than 3 lakhs people who've been affected with the COVID. And every evening or whenever I'm going to the rooftop, That is the cloud or the sky. Uh, the evening Maghrib Azan when it is going on, one of the favorite, that music for my father. Probably when it is happening, I'm probably searching my father again and again. Whenever I'm seeing those sky and the Maghrib Azan and these things are happening, surrounding. So uh, these two things which I have told, that one is the direct interpretation and the second one is of course my interpretation, but that is open for the interpretation, unintentional interpretation of the audience. So you may have something different with this visual narrative, interpreting those through those images. So I think that's all from my end. Nothing more, actually. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience for listening. I'm not a very good speaker at all, so that's why I should apologize in front of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaushik, for your very interesting take on, the current times that we are going through. The next speaker for today's session is Mr. Jiten Arora. Jiten has over 20 years of experience in design, practice, and design education, which includes a 9-year stint at NID Ahmedabad, 2 years at Myers MITID Pune, and 7 years at DSK International Campus Pune. Currently, he heads the DICE VFS School of Entertainment Arts, Mumbai, along with teaching at ISDI School of Design and Innovation, Mumbai. Jiten holds a bachelor's degree in architecture from Lucknow University and a master's degree in museum studies from New York University. He has trained in content, concept, and narrative development for exhibitions and worked on developing museums like the RBI Monetary Museum, Mumbai, and Virasat-e-Khalsa, Anandpur Sahib. He has also contributed to the modernization master plan of Victoria Memorial Hall Museum, Kolkata, and to the curatorial and exhibition guidelines for the 2008 C.Y. Tomley retrospective at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, Bilbao. His time at DSK International Campus, first as the in charge of design and film studies, and then as the head of the foundation program at Rubica Supinfocom, is instrumental and formative to his diversion into script writing for short explanatory films. Jiten is a recipient of the prestigious Fulbright Nehru Masters Fellowship 2006-2008. I now invite Jiten to present his play story titled Narrative Intervention in Public Spaces and Public Places in Narratives.
Thank you so much, Urvashi ma'am. And thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for that presentation. I really like the idea that you proposed that there's always two stories being told through a photograph. One that the photographer intends to tell, and the others that unintentionally audiences capture or interpret. So that is a brilliant takeaway for me. And I think I'm going to take that back into the classroom as well, with your permission, and talk to my students about it. So thank you so much. I was very sorry to hear of your personal loss. So please, my condolences extended to you and your family. This was definitely a very, very tough time for a lot of us. Maybe not for everyone, but for those who faced it, I think it kind of started as a lot of grave lessons. But thank you so much for finding time today. And I was very, very happy to see your photographs, and maybe we could connect later as well. Thank you, ma'am, for that introduction, and Happy New Year to all of you. It's the 3rd of Jan, barely into 2021, looking at it very, very hopefully. So I hope that the year goes on a great note for each one of us here. And is it possible, because my presentation is going to be slightly interactive, is it possible for the audiences here to please switch on their videos? I'd be very, very grateful if we could, because we're going to play a game at the very start. So I'm going to play this presentation slightly. I do have a presentation, but I'm going to play it slightly differently. I'll begin with a question, but to answer that, you will have to do a very quick and easy mental exercise. And for that, I'd need to see who's really participating, who's really there and who's not there. So is it possible for you to please switch on your cameras? I'd be very, very grateful. No? All right. Oh, that's sad. Oh yeah, thank you, Mr. Sharma. Anyone else? All right. Anyway, let me just share my presentation. So I hope you can all see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first exercise that I'm going to give is I'm going to ask you to quickly close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, I'm going to give you a verbal prompt. All right. And as a response to that verbal prompt, you just have to make a mental note of the responses that you get, which can be either pictures or thoughts that come to your mind after listening to the prompt. And then we'll wait for 5 seconds for you to make a mental note, after which you can open your eyes and share your responses with me, either by typing them in the Zoom chat box, or if the moderator allows, you can always unmute yourself and speak to me directly, right? So should I just give you the verbal prompt? Dr. Sharma, you're cheating. No, I think your screen has frozen. All right, so no complaints. So the prompt is very simple actually, and it is public spaces. What comes to your mind when I say public spaces? Whoso was ready can respond. What came to your mind when you hear the phrase public spaces? Would anyone like to unmute and speak it out, or maybe put it in the chat box for me to read your response?
Connaught Place.
Not Place. Excellent. What else? Any other responses? First responses? Anyone?
The public park.
The public park. Okay. Excellent.
The chalk areas.
The chalk areas. Brilliant. Anything else? And those who have your cameras off can speak as well. You can always unmute yourself.
We have an answer called bus stand from Amit.
Bazaar, chalk area, parks, bus stand. Yes, excellent. Yeah. Are there any more responses? People utilization areas. Excellent. Great. Great. I was kind of expecting similar responses. I had this feeling that most of them would be outdoor. And I don't know why. All of us are so biased towards outdoor spaces, outdoor public spaces. Aren't public spaces indoor as well? They are, right? So today I'm going to talk about indoor public spaces. Even though, and spaces like cinema halls, multiplexes, malls, libraries, lecture halls, universities, transport hubs, exhibition galleries, and so on. They're all public spaces as well. And I do know that there's a difference between the kind of public spaces that you imagined and the kind of public spaces I'm going to talk about, in that most of these spaces are controlled or monitored, the indoor especially. But they too are public spaces. One cannot deny that. And the only difference being the fact in how they origin, right? How they came into being. So for indoor spaces, for example, the origin doesn't lie in, say, being claimed by people, but in someone designing them and offering them to the public. So, and these places can be offered for free, like in the case of parks and public libraries, and for a price. So for somebody said bus stands, transportation hubs, cinema halls, exhibition galleries, they can always buy a ticket and go inside. So indoor public spaces, unlike outdoor public spaces, which are claimed by people and which are very organic in their growth, indoor public spaces are gifted or extended to people for use rather than being self-claimed by them. But that doesn't snatch away the definition of them being public spaces. So today's talk is going to be about indoor public spaces. And the point, like I said, I'm trying to emphasize on is that public spaces can be indoors too. In fact, whatever little experience that I've had with built spaces, it has been with indoor public spaces. And I've based my talk, today's talk, on 2 such very early experiences in my career. So I'm going to share how I came face to face with storytelling while devising indoor public spaces earlier in my career. But first, a very quick overview of who I am. So my name is Jitendra Arora, as you may see on the slide as well. I had a private film school in Mumbai called the DICE Vancouver Film School of Entertainment Arts. So this has been established in collaboration with the DICE ecosystem of higher education in Mumbai and the Vancouver Film School in Vancouver, Canada. And at one point of time, it's very interesting. My mainstay was architecture. I was studying architecture, but I was just consuming films on the side as a leisurely activity. Whereas today, most of my discursive participation is in the discourse of cinema and less in terms of architecture. So please forgive me if I seem very out of place here and the odd one out here, because I kind of have lost touch with the architectural and urban planning kind of discourse. But I'd still try to sort of go back to it as much as I can with as much knowledge as I still may have. So let's begin. So they say that we are born storytellers, but somehow we lose this craft as we grow up. I, for one, had certainly lost it. As I remember, whenever I tried to make up something or cook up an excuse or fictionalize a real incident, people would instantly catch me and say, "Bhaiya, kyun bana rahe ho?" They said that I had such a transparent face that it was easy to tell if I was lying. So eventually, I had to keep a beard, hoping some of the transparency could be covered. So anyway, that personal anecdote aside, coming back to storytelling, I had completely lost sight of storytelling until I was confronted with the need to professionally storytell during one of my earlier professional interior projects. So I'm going to discuss that project now. And I'm not going to reveal what that project is, but I think by the end of it, you would have gathered enough information to actually make up, to understand and interpret as to what the project was. So on one end, we had a built space, all of 40 feet by 40 feet, no windows, supported by columns every 10 to 13 feet, I roughly remember. And on the other, we had a thick pothi, and I'm using the word pothi and not a book or a documentation because I think pothi, the Hindi word pothi carries that weight and volume. So the word is very expressive in that sense. So, and on the other hand, we had a thick pothi of research, documentation of history of Indian numismatics, coins, promissory notes, hundis, and related histories such as that of barter, valuation, metal, paper, politics, financial institutions, banking, mints, and so on, to a synchronic study of security features of currencies, role of the RBI, monetary policies, and much more. And in the middle was me, not sure of what to do. All that content needed to be fitted into that space, but in a way that engages the audience and such that the information is easy to grasp, easy to connect, and easy to remember, as well as at the same time, fresh enough for you to take interest in it. Can you guess what kind of public space this was meant to be? Anyone? Any guesses so far? No idea. All right, this was going to be a museum of numismatics, Indian numismatics. So the question we were facing now is how do we fit the two, the space and the information? That's where I was confronted with the need to understand narrative structures and then devise a few that will do justice to the content as well as complement the spatial format that we had been allotted. And guess what came to my rescue? Films. The year was 2000 and Amores Perros, a Mexican film, or in English, the title would be Love for the Dogs by Alejandro Inarritu, had just released. I don't know how many of you know Alejandro Inarritu, but he's responsible for getting DiCaprio his only Oscar for the movie Revenant, right? So if DiCaprio now has an Oscar, it's all thanks to this director. And in 2000, I think this was his debut film, if I'm not mistaken. And it just caught the film world, the audiences in North America by storm. Now, luckily, I was at NID, and NID had and still has a great and most updated collection of cultural capital from across the globe, both officially and unofficially. So some of us were lucky to have laid our hands on this film, and was so powerful in its storytelling that it lingered. At the very beginning, two cars crash head-on a busy road. Of course, the drivers as well as passengers are badly hurt. One is even crippled for life. Both the cars have dogs in them, and they're onlookers as well. And one of them is a dog walker. The film is all about unraveling their stories, and in the process, surprising us as to how these strangers, each a dog owner, a dog lover, have actually discreetly intertwined lives. The moment of the accident is a pivotal point where the three stories converge, as well as diverge or move on from. It's almost like everything in their life had to lead to this and from this unpredictable and inevitable moment. For me, however, it worked as a eureka moment. It gave me an idea about categorization of information and spaces. What I did was, in my space layout, actually craft a pivotal zone that audiences enter into and go in and out of to other zones depending on the information that they need. almost like a website's homepage, which has hyperlinks to other pages. Now, at that time, in most websites, to access the main menu, you had to return to the homepage. Not like today, where homepage is just a landing page, but the main menu can be accessed from everywhere. This still holds true for as popular a website as Wikipedia, where the language change can only happen on homepage. So wherever you are, if you wish to change the language of the content that you're reading, you have to come back on the homepage. So this was basically the architecture of most of the websites at that point, that you have to return to the homepage in order to access the main menu, not like today where you can access it from any page. So the pivotal zone was also like the homepage, the introductory page that offered a quick overview to the information, plus access to other information based on what you choose to know first. So either you can go into section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and should you feel confused, if you at all feel confused, you can come back and look at so it will also have glossary of terms. So you can always come back and check those glossary of terms and go back for larger clarity. Now, the tragedy with design is, and for everything that is related to creative practice, is that there are going to be more than one iteration. And the design process is rarely static. And that's exactly what happened with this design as well, is that even though this first iteration was very democratic and very powerful in nature, ultimately we had to succumb to certain practical forces, and ultimately our kind of design looked somewhat like this, which basically followed a very linear chronological structure. You enter at one spot, you kind of move on, and through a maze of galleries, then you ultimately enter out of an exit. But that being said, I had found my source of inspiration for my future work. Now in project 2, the challenge grew many times over. And that was probably both because of the constraints of space, because the space was really more awkward than what this was, but also in terms of the ambition of the kind of content that had to be matched to the kind of space that we had. So the space now was triangular in nature. And those who are architects here would know that this is probably not the easiest geometry to work with. And it was an interior space, obviously, 70 feet edge length. The floor level rose from 0 at the starting to about 4 feet towards the end. The ceiling was coffered, base height 12 feet. So which means that here the clearance was only 8 feet. And audience would be a mixed group of say 50 to 100 at a point of time. So you would see groups and groups of people entering this space. The entrance was pointed, although the exit was dissipated, which was quite a relief. And the content had to be, so this is the kind of space that we had, and this is the gallery that I'm talking about. At this stage of construction or in this stage of design, it's open, but ultimately it was thought that this space would be covered and it will also become an exhibition gallery. So it was supposed to be a terrace at that point of time initially, but then there was a proposal to cover this as well. And the connection, this was a connecting space between, say, this large ship-like form here, which was called Nanak Naam Jahaz Hai, literally. And then to another one, which if you can notice, there's a skylight here, if you can notice the cursor, which is probably the most naturally well-lit area of this entire building. And the rough title at that point of time, we used to refer to this as the Chanan space, or Miti Dhund Jab Chanan Hoya. These are Punjabi sort of quotes from Gurbani, I believe. And the section that I was going to do was basically a connecting section between this entire space and this entire space, which was basically to talk about the social milieu of Punjab on the eve of Guru Nanak's birth on 29th November 1469. So here is an introduction to what Sikhism is. Here's an introduction to life and times of the 5 gurus. And here in between, we had to talk about what was the real social milieu at the point of time when the gurus kind of appeared. So again, the problem was the same. I was at the same crossroads. How do you fit a narrative, such kind of a narrative, into a space like this? How do you achieve semblance between space and information? And again, I was confident that if I wanted to look waywards, sideways, I could find a solution in a narrative structure that exists in a cinematic universe. And that's what I did. This time, however, what came to my rescue was the structure of an anthology film. Not any one in particular, but yeah, the whole sort of structure which uses different stories directed by different directors, disconnected in events, but bound by a common theme. One such film is the 1989 American film called New York Stories, which showcased a cross-section of the quintessential New York life through the lens of 3 Academy Award-winning directors, Woody Allen, Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese. Each a different story, a different rendition, but capturing the spirit of New York. I found this sort of structure synonymous to pockets of spaces. Each pocket encapsulating a different aspect of the milieu, but together are able to communicate a spirit. So this is how the design space. So I worked with the geometry of it and divided the space into pockets. So where pockets which will absorb people. So this could be first pocket, and those who don't fit in the pocket move on, they get absorbed into this pocket. Those who don't fit in, they move on, they get absorbed into this pocket, and the rest of them just leave the space. And really there shouldn't be anything that stops them along their journey. So there must be exhibits, must be of the nature of visual nature and not an experiential nature rather than reading nature, because then that would hold them there. So the idea was to keep them moving and not hold them there. And ultimately, like I said, that iterations happened. So this was the very first thing, but the project leads kind of then converted this into a more refined project. And then the special sort of distribution became somewhat like this. And this is the kind of sort of space that we wanted to generate in that area, which is more experiential in nature, using the language of arches to talk about changing times and how architectures were changing, evolving through history, obviously. And then establishing Punjab as a land of soil and river, as a very rich with a very rich geography and architecture and all kinds of professions, all kind of mixes of profession. And we wanted to introduce the sort of so-called lower castes at that point of time, because that's because of the uplifting nature of Guru Nanak and how he would embrace all the worksmen and kind of talk to them directly rather than kind of basically demolishing this whole system that you need a temple to go to God. I mean, so yeah. That was in a nutshell what I was trying to do here. It was combining the knowledge from films and spatial structure to create spatial narratives. But what happens to cinematic narratives of public spaces, vice versa? So I mean, here I'm talking about spaces where I've used cinematic narrative to create experiences and narrative structures. But what about cinematic narratives of public spaces? Does that occur too? And so this is very interesting, because the place of a place in a story is to always serve as the backdrop in which the characters exist. Seldom we do see examples of visual narratives that favor a place as a character, except in some movies that I'm going to talk about. So one such movie is the 2017-18 Gali Gulliyan. I don't know if you've heard of this movie. This is it was praised critically for its direction as well as the performance of its lead, played by Manoj Bajpayee. So I remember the inaugural conversation that we had, and there was this gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, forgive me for that. And he talked at length about his experiences in Old Delhi and how Old Delhi is transforming or needs to transform, or that transformation needs to stop. I remember it was a very passionate, sort of nostalgic kind of a journey to his past. And he was talking about old Delhi. And I was like, that's great, because Gali Gulliyan does the same thing. It basically takes you back in time, except that it shows you the underbelly of that neighborhood rather than showing you the sort of the pristine parts of that neighborhood. And in that underbelly are these lanes which are very, very tight, which are very, very claustrophobic, which can trap you emotionally and mentally. And that's what happens, that it's a maze of streets and our protagonist is literally trapped in them, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And is never has the courage to leave the dark and dingy lanes. And it's one of those rare films where the architecture is an external manifestation of a protagonist's mental state, and hence the place is as primary in the story as a protagonist. As compared to the other film that I could think of, which is also set in Old Delhi, is Delhi 6, which is a 2009 film by Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra. But if you compare the two, you'd know, and I think those of you who kind of follow film biz, you would also know that in spite of a great cast and crew, this film did not really connect with the audiences. And one of the many reasons, of course, the story was a little skewed, I guess, but one of the many other reasons of it not finding a spot in the hearts of its audience is probably the lack of authenticity of the setting, which Gali Gulliyan achieves, because it's entirely shot in Old Delhi. However, this one is made up. It's made up Old Delhi. The sets were actually created in the Salt Lake city of Sambar near Jaipur, in the Jaipur district. And it was shot entirely there. In fact, the sets were created, and wherever the Old Delhi skyline was required, it was basically digitally added on. So the scenes at Jama Masjid, or scenes with Jama Masjid in the background, or other sort of historical structures of Old Delhi were basically digitally added by means of VFX. So this basically, again, even though the story was set in a place and there could have been a great amalgam of the character and the place still looked alienated, or the characters looked alienated to the space that they were inhabiting, because they were actually not inhabiting the real space. Now, as a cusp of these experiences, one cannot, if you're talking about place and settings, you cannot miss talking about Lagaan in 2001 and a recent film, Helaro. Both the films, the reason why I've put them together is because both of them are quite similar. They're both set in Bhuj. I mean, they've been shot in Bhuj. They've been set in Bhuj as well as shot in Bhuj entirely. And both talk about oppression. So while on one side you have oppression, which relates to race, and on the other, there's oppression that relates to gender. And there are groups of people who team up. One team plays a sport, the other team performs a dance, and how that sport and that dance becomes a tool for emancipation. So very, very similar in themes, but very, very popular as well, Lagaan especially, right? And both of them, the only sets that they had to create were bungas. So basically these traditional structures from Kutch, houses from Kutch, which was the only sets. And in Lagaan, of course, it looked, with the lighting, it looked a little made up, but I think they achieved that realism a little better in Helaro. But obviously they're 18 years apart, so some developments happened since then. And both are instrumental in placing the heritage of Kutch on the world map, and that's the beauty of it. So Helaro's won a national award, and Lagaan, as you may know, was one of the 5 shortlisted films for the Best Foreign Film Oscars in 2002. And they have created a strong association between the audience and the place. That's so much so, every once in a while, we can hear a tourist making a plea for conservation of certain structures in Bhuj and around Bhuj on Twitter. So here are these tweets where a random tourist goes in thinking, you have this idea, oh, Lagaan was shot here, and looks at this building and makes a plea on Twitter saying that, look, renovation is necessary now and hope it is prioritized. So such is the impact, such is the role that films can play in taking our attention to public places or public concerns. Now, talking about film settings and places, the dialogue would be incomplete if I do not mention 2 other films, very, very contrasting, by this female director, Zoya Akhtar. And she made a film called Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara in 2011, which was entirely set in Spain. And people said that the Spain tourism, and more and more Indian tourists suddenly wanted to go to Spain. So that is the impact that her film had, that Spain was on everybody's mind and everybody wanted to either go to Barcelona or wherever, right? Madrid or Barcelona. So those became destination points, not for weddings though. That's still Italy. But then I think she was also heavily criticized that she was still making movies for the elite. And the second time on, she actually decided to cast her lens onto Dharavi. And she's created a great film there, but it's entirely shot in Dharavi. And there were any sets, they were constructed within Dharavi so that they kind of merged together. And there is this particular scene, which I think everyone who's seen the film would remember, the Dhoptoingi scene, right? Boyfriend ko dhoptongi type scene. I don't know if you remember that, right? So if you remember that scene, and that scene's shot very well. In fact, when you see the scene on the film or a similar scene there, it seems very romantic. A couple on a bridge, separated from the crowd. They have a space. It's a public space, but still sort of they have the intimacy because it's a very narrow bridge. Not everyone uses it. So they get their privacy in a public space. And I like that idea very, very much. That privacy out in the open, using only distance. And so there's distance there. But instead of making it look beautiful, she actually shows you at some point of time, she actually shows you the nala and what it's being used for as the garbage dumping ground. So she does deliberately take the camera onto, so as the characters leave and the camera just tilts and it shows you where they were standing. And this was not such a romantic place if you thought it was. It isn't. And that's the real beauty of these films, is that even though one film is all about beautifying and glamorizing, say, Spain, and the other one is de-glamorizing Dharavi to as much as possible. And so, yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is that cinema has immense power to evoke the magic of a place. And there's so many more films that have intertwined the magic of a place in their storytelling, uplifting them from being mere backdrops to being central to the plot. We certainly can't imagine a Gully Gulaya without Old Delhi, or Lagan without Kutch, or ZNMD without Spain, or Gully Boy without Dharavi, right? So that's how integral these places are in the story setup. And imagine if these were set up elsewhere. The film won't be as real, as powerful as it is now, right? So I believe that more and more real stories based in real places will help turn a little movement into a mass movement. If we are trying to talk about conservation of public places, if we're trying to build a dialogue between public and people who care about public spaces, I think film could be a very, very smart and very, very powerful tool. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. And if you have any feedback, any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. Comments are welcome too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitendra, for your very engaging and insightful presentation and your take on how, narratives can be built around public spaces using the tools of storytelling and films especially. Last speaker for the session is Ms. Deepti Pant. Ms. Deepti Pant is an alumnus of the National Institute of Design and Film Institute of India, NID, and FTII. She has successfully delivered numerous high visibility visualization and design research projects. She has a superlative ability to tell an impactful story and has done it across the boards for global clients like Samsung, LG, GSK, Mudra, and many more. She has worked with strategists, brand managers, and senior decision makers through data and research in compelling and easily intelligible ways, and has used design, innovation, and storytelling to bring a perspective, insights to strategy and business growth. She has been a senior research and storytelling for she has been a senior corporate professional in the domain of design, research, and storytelling for the last 24 years. She's also a successful corporate trainer, having taken more than 1,000 trainings in companies like Infosys, Wipro, IMS, and many more. She has learned Dastan Goi from Ustad Mahmood Farooqi and has performed in Kumaon Literature Festival, Chandigarh Literature Festival, and many more. She is founder director of the Truth, an Institute of Innovation and Storytelling. I now invite Deepti to present her play story titled The Impact of Visual Detailing in Narrative, Merging Dastan Goi and Filmmaking.
Hello, everybody. Everybody can hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Great. I'm not going to use any PPT. Keeping the tradition of Dastan Goi, we all are against the PPTs. So our Ustad used to say, Agar dikhane ki zarat pade, tumne kahani nahi kahi. So if you have to show something, then that means you are not able to tell the story correctly. And that is where I actually joined hand with Urvashi, because when you have to tell a story very clearly, you have to also tell where the story is set. And that is why I am merging filmmaking, Dastan Goi, and design management, which I did at NID. Somehow, it is NID that introduced me actually to the other aspect of storytelling. I'm from Lucknow, and I'm a Kathak dancer. So I was a very energetic child. So my father put me into Kathak, thinking my energies will be used somewhere. And dance was one of these, one of the energy let out things. So when you were a kid, you were a 5-year-old, you are not really going to dance. You're just going to dance school so that you have friends to dance with. But that learning became very important and potent for me when I did my first project with Titan. In fact, meanwhile doing my course at NID, the Titan project came my way, and they were looking to design some new products for women. And naturally, they came to NID, and I and Professor Nina Sabnani, she was my mentor. We had taken this course up, taken this project up. And when I was doing research in this particular field as to what should we tell Titan that watches of India should look like, we actually came to public spaces. We actually came to stories. The stories that we generally talk about. The stories that we gift to each other. What are the stories we give to each other? The stories that we give to each other are Devi ka Jagran mein aana, right? We call everybody to a Ram Leela. We call everybody to a Ras Leela of Krishna. We call everybody to Satyanarayan ki puja, right? That is the story that we call everybody to. That is the stories that we gift. That is the visuals that we have to implant into watches so that they can be gifted in occasions of a Happy New Year or a Diwali or a wedding. And that is where we came to the spaces, because naturally the visual implications has to be brought in from what these stories visually represent. So we started looking at what are the visual representation done at public places about Krishna, about Ram, about Devi, the Taj Mahal, because we also go to Taj Mahal. You see, honeymoon happens at Taj Mahal. So when we started looking at these spaces, we started borrowing motifs from these spaces to be used in the watches as a part of product design. And suddenly, you know, my Kathak, my design management, my history, my mythology, all, and you know, as children when we used to go out with our dad, that chakri that we used to run with, that used to go round in the air, if you guys remember, all of you, with all those colors. And suddenly, those became the point of connect between me and the consumer, me and India and consumer and my mythology and my culture. And that I borrowed from the public spaces I had gone to. Remember this toy we used to buy that used to tun tun awaj? I remember designing a watch background exactly like that toy, that lattu, that fikri. Firki, if you remember, that firki that goes round. I don't know how many of you have seen now. We all are now traveling by airports. So, but if you've ever gone to a mela, I think Kaushik ji, you will definitely know, because I've seen a photograph of yours in a mela, that firki. And suddenly, those common things that you buy, that you gift when you go, became our point of connect between the consumer and us. And point of celebration, point of enjoyment, of entertainment. And those were the point of visual references which we had seen in either at public spaces or in Bollywood. So suddenly, now by that time in my life, Dastan Goi had not come. Dastan Goi came much later. So when I did my Titan project, I suddenly realized the importance of celebration and the visual implications of those celebrations. What are the places you go to? What are the things you gift? What is the wrapping paper that you use to wrap your gift with? Why your wrapping paper should be red? Why it should have flowers? Why should be in a certain way? And those are the visual implications that remain in our mind when we go to visit places, either with the family together, either as a honeymoon couple, either we are going to malls, or we go to watch a film or a mela together, which are our places of celebration and happiness. So that is where, and all of these are the point of storytelling. They are born either out of certain mythology, certain heritage, or history. So that is where I started connecting these two things together. That is how my journey with storytelling started, actually, in a very serious way. Before, I was a Kathak dancer, which my parents had put me into, so I used to do Kathak dance. But after Titan, storytelling became a very, very serious mode of giving answers, of connecting with my consumer, finding answers to strategies, business strategies, brand growth and brand strategies. And when I went on to work with Mudra and Mica and other such companies, I realized suddenly that we are sitting on a powerhouse of stories which are actually born out of people and places. अगर कृष्ण है तो मथुरा है, अगर राम है तो अयोध्या है, अगर दुर्गा है, अगर शिव है तो कैलाश है, अगर दुर्गा है तो पर्वत है. And so we saw that all of our mythology are connected with places. You cannot, अगर द्वारका है तो कृष्ण है. You see? So अगर 14 साल का वनवास है तो लंका है, अगर रावण है, so अगर हनुमान है तो किष्किंधा पर्वत है. So each of our characters in our stories were connected with spaces. And somehow, when we were depicting them, we were letting go of the space. Why? Why we are letting go of the space? Why we are not using those spaces also to represent those characters of mythology, of history? अगर शाहजहां है तो लाल किला है, ताजमहल है, right? So why are we we have very, very, very happily separated the characters from the spaces. And then I came to my second project, which was a global project, which I was doing with Samsung, where I was the project head. At that time, I was heading an innovation consultancy called Onio Next and now Turil Labs. And it was a global project. We were working across 7 countries, including countries like Russia, where the language we had no idea. And then we understood that the mythological representation, the historical, the visual representation, even the way we were representing the UI. We were working with Samsung on UI UX at that point of time. And this is way back in 2005 and 4, when UI UX was not heard of as UI UX. There were no courses of UI UX. And what kind of experience you want to give to your consumer? When you want to give an experience to your consumer, you have to take him back to the space and experience where he was the happiest most. And that your product should be able to give. Whatever it is, whether it is a microwave oven, whether it is a phone, whether it is a UI, whether it is a UX. And that is what again made us go deep into, at that point of time, we actually traveled across India from Kerala to Karnataka, looking at mythologies, common spaces, common places. I was actually traveling for 6 months across India, barring Kashmir and a little bit of Northeast and Nagaland. We went till Guwahati and Assam, collecting and feeling the spaces that represent India and Indian consumer will feel happy and comfortable with. And I'm sorry, I cannot share photographs of any of these because I have an NDA till 2035 with them, because these are innovation projects. And we created visual collages of the spaces, of the motives, of where an Indian consumer feels comfortable, where he goes for entertaining, where he goes to celebrate his happiness. And then Dastangoi entered my life. When Dastangoi entered my life, and filmmaking parallelly also was entering my life, because I had gone to FTII. After that, I took a career break and I went to FTII, and Dastangoi parallelly happened together. I realized that Dastangoi, despite it being an art where no technology is used, where you sit on a stage with a cup of water and wearing white clothes, no color, and you are speaking in a language possibly which the common man right now doesn't. We used to do Dastangoi in Farsi. Initially we used to start it with Farsi, Ghazal, and then come to Urdu. And then now we do it in Hindustani. Means easy Hindi mixed with Urdu. But then I started seeing that film and Dastangoi are actually not too separate from each other? Many reasons. First, Dastan Goi also focuses on taking you into the realms of magic and unbelievability that our Bollywood films do. I am focusing on Bollywood films that our Bollywood films do. And Dastan Goi also focuses on spaces. It respects spaces a lot. Bollywood films respect space a lot. If there is a Karwa Chauth, then there is a total Karwa Chauth dress. Right now, possibly women are not wearing a red sari on Karwa Chauth on the ground, but in a Bollywood, they will still be wearing a red sari. Because that is what our design cues are. Our psychological design cues are. You see. So, and that is same thing we did in Dastan Goi. The design cues of Mughal era, of Sultan era, when Dastan Goi would have come from Morocco and Persia, those were still there. Those were still there. And we had to actually decode it for 2020 audience when we performed Dastan Goi. We had to break it down. For example, I'm going to tell you, at the end of Dastan Goi, we have to always tell one line. Sahire Mashrik Joli Zarrare Shua ki liye Charkhe Shobda Baz pe aaya. Yani ki subah ho gayi. Good morning. Why? Because Dastan Goi was told through the night. When in the evening people would get tired, they would come down to the Chabutra, to the local space or to the Darbar, and the Dastan Go would start his story. I like the way, remember the evening films you used to see as children, especially who were 40 plus would know what I'm talking about. And we had those Raat Ko Chitrahar, Raat Ko films. And the Dastan Go would continue the story and he would finish the story as soon as the sun would rise. And I'm going to tell you the meaning of this sentence. Sahire Mashrik Joli Zarrare Shua ki liye. Look at the space. The traveler of east. Sahire Mashrik. Sahir means traveler. Mashrik means east. Traveler of east. Joli Zarrare Shua ki liye. Means he is carrying a bag full of rays. Joli Zarrare Shua. Zarrare Shua means rays. Sa Joli Zarrare Shua ki liye Charkhe Shobda Baz par aaya. Charkhe Shobda Baz means horizon. Means something that goes round. Charkha. Wo charkha jo chal raha hai Bhagwan ka. Charkhe Shobda Baz par aaya. Even in that one line where they are saying ki subah ho gayi, they are talking about the space, the horizon. So a story when told with all of its glory, magic, finesse, and with this potential to be so that it is able to connect with the audience deeply, you cannot let go of the space. You have to honor the space. You have to magicalize the space, if I can use that word, excuse me. You have to bring magic, an element of magic in that space. You have to glorify the space. You have to revere, respect, and build the space to a level that the stories, even if it is of a simple to, even if it is something like Lagan, even if it is something like Delhi 26, it looks like out of the world. And that is why when you hear Dastan Goi, which are simple stories generally, but the way they expand on the space, they expand on the jungle that is Amar Ayyar is roaming about. Amar Ayyar, the central character in the Dastan Goi. The way that the entire jungle is described, the way it actually reminds me of old age films of Mother India, of Mughal-e-Azam, where the pain was taken to really make the space a magical space so that your characters become something like a story, like a fantasy, and evoke the child within everybody. And that is where, for me, filmmaking and Dastan Goi comes together. Technology or no technology. And that is why for me, spaces and explaining, exploring, expanding, and experiencing them as a storyteller and then bringing it out to the audience is something which is very, very important. Whether you are doing a Samsung project or a Titan project, or whether you are sitting on a stage and telling a story like as a Dastan Go, it becomes extremely important to honor and respect the space your character and your story is set into. Thank you. And yes, Kaushik, condolences for your father. And I know we have lost, I also lost my Mamaji in this entire this thing. And because he was living in hills, I'm from hills, and you know, medical help would not reach him on time. So we lost him actually, that's why. Any questions?
Yeah.
Any?
Thank you, Deepti, for your very interesting take on both Bollywoods, and it was very, very enlightening to know about, you know, the context and the rigor with which a story is told as part of Dastan Goi. We will now begin our exploratory discussion around the 3 play stories, and one by one take up the questions that the audience may have. Atulya, can you please pick up the questions?
There are no questions yet. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask for yourself.
Okay.
There are a lot of comments. There are a lot of comments though for the session to all the hosts. So thank you for the great presentation by all 3. It was very interesting.
Okay. Great. I have a few questions. I will, try to explore how these different mediums of storytelling can be, used as a tool for storytelling about public spaces. Deepti, my first question is to you. Do you see a potential in Dastan Goi as a tool for developing narratives around public spaces as an interesting way of engaging people, creating awareness about public spaces and how public spaces actually impact our lives on a daily basis?
Oh yes, in fact, how many minutes do I have? Otherwise, Atulya will go to catch me.
No, you can take your time.
In fact, I did a project with Jaigarh Fort where we used the tools of Dastan Goi and a lot of visual storytelling because Princess Diya Kumari, she wanted Jaigarh Fort to be as commercial as Amer Fort, and there were not many footfalls in Jaigarh Fort at that point of time. So I had done Jaigarh Fort as one of my projects where I had used Dastan Goi as a very, very important way of making people understand, enjoy, and be entertained by the Jaigarh water system. I don't know how many of you know Jaigarh water system. Please go there and learn about Jaigarh water system. It is one of the first RO systems of the world where the water will flow down from the hill, and how the Maharaja of Jaigarh had made that entire system, that the entire underground storage was even purer than the pure RO water you get today. And I had weaved stories around it. We went to the Jaigarh village, we went to the villages around, and we picked up a lot of folk stories, and we trained the local storytellers, the guides that you call, and woven the entire technology of Jaigarh water system so that people can understand that that aqua systems were also before, and people were still at even that time were aware of purity of water, and they were purifying water in a very natural way. And even then at that point of time, the RO system, the water was, and there I had used Dastan Goi extensively and very aggressively, because if somebody has been to Rajasthan, then you would know that people are very talkative there, and they have a very distinctive way of talking. So actually I used their mannerism and mixed it with Dastan Goi, and I to bring in more footfalls, to make Jaigarh Fort more interesting, and also then I parallelly worked with other places. Then I also worked with the ASI on Qutub Minar, but somehow uske baad kuch funding ka problem ho gaya and that stopped. But yes, I think Dastan Goi is one of the most important way of making people interact with the public spaces, and making not just people, I would say even teenagers. I've seen a lot of youngsters getting very interested in Dastan Goi now, who are coming to learn Dastan Goi from me, actually. And uh, all of them are focusing on. There is a lady in Banaras. She is she learned Dastan Goi from me, and she now takes people on storytelling tours around Banaras and using the tools of Dastan Goi. Then there is another lady who's based in Chennai. She has learned Dastan Goi from me, and she does Dastan Goi in Tamil, and she takes people in tours to Chennai, and in Telugu and Tamil, not you doing Urdu and Farsi and Hindustani. So, and people are loving it because when you are at a space, then you want to know, you want to know a lot many questions. You have so many questions around that space. What happened, who built it, why it broken down, who came after who took over, who ruined it, who broke, what was the story, the mystery, the love story, the death story, the ghost story, everything around it. And there has to be somebody who has to be trained properly to be able to tell the stories. And Dastan Goi as a classical art becomes very handy. Otherwise people generally randomly just talk stories, and then it loses steam down the line.
Thank you, Deepti. I think it is very important what you have pointed out, that the understanding of whatever context we are talking about is very important when we are trying to structure it in the form of a narrative. So what are the things that we try to, bring forth in the stories also depends upon the person who is telling the story. So the perspective matters a lot in public spaces. That is what I feel is very important, because public spaces actually have embedded narratives which are very diverse, which can be very experiential, very subjective. So I think this seems to be a very interesting format. I'm sure nobody has kind of experimented with Dastan Goi and talking about public spaces as a central theme. I hope people, after listening to your presentation, they will find some interest in this form of storytelling and might be interested in learning the art form as well. Jiten, my question to you is, can storytelling be used as a medium for community engagement with public spaces? And
always. There's no other means actually. If you don't, stories are the easiest way to engage people. So I think yes, always. I mean, my answer is yes. How do you engage them? I think, like I was saying in my presentation, that films is a very, very powerful medium. Cinema is a very powerful medium, and I'm not saying the cinema of the scale that's made in Bollywood, big budget, high production values. It could also be independent film. And I'm going to encourage. I mean, I was really inspired by this whole concept of place stories to actually take up and make this into a semester-long class about places. We haven't really explored it. I haven't done it myself, where I've kind of focused on place as a subject. Like I said, the tendency is always to use place as a backdrop. It's always a setting in which something larger happens with the character. But I think suddenly you've brought places to forefront. And I think the coming semester, I'm going to talk about places majorly and treat places as characters rather than characters within places. So that's something that I'm taking away. But yes, stories, to answer your question, stories is the easiest, most natural way to engage people. That's the best way. Conversations. I mean, by stories, I mean conversations more than fabricated stories.
Yeah, I think it's a very important starting point because when we're talking about public spaces, it's all about perception. As a designer, we may have put in all the interventions in place to make it feel look lively and secure, but the way the space is perceived by different people is ultimately what matters to them. If an individual doesn't feel safe in a space and doesn't feel connected with that space, I think somewhere the narrative between the designer and the people who are using the space is somewhere disconnected. So that's, I think, something which we as people who are working in public spaces need to learn, while we are preparing our project reports, or we are, trying to develop a concept for a public space. I think it's very important to be able to perceive the public space from different people's perspectives And that would require, a continuous engagement with different types of...
Education is good enough, I guess. I think what Zoya Akhtar did in that Dhoktunga scene was to choose a bridge, and the bridge is a public place. Like, at least in that setting, the bridge is a public place, but at least it also allows, because it's so narrow, it allows only 2 people at a time. It also becomes an isolated place. So you're still in the public eye, but you're having a very private moment, and it's above a nala, which is not romantic at all. But one of the most romantic moments happens at that place. So it's that's the irony that I was very, very fascinated by, and that could lead, and that's only because she could perceive it that way. That was the perception of that space, that even in this sort of semi-secluded, within the private eye but secluded space, could be a very personal space for these 2 characters. I mean, I've seen films. I think Lakshya, I think they showcased Preeti Zinta and Hrithik Roshan dating at Haus Khas, or sort of near Qutub Minar, which is the usual place for sort of lovers to hang out. But I think this is very unique for Zoya Akhtar too, and I think that just talks about how she looks at public spaces and what the connection that she's able to make with it. And yes, you're right, and it is only a case of perception in that case.
Yes, I think it's time that we bring the attention and a conversation around public spaces, and the visual media and films is a very, very powerful medium, to get the idea across. So I'm very glad that we look forward to some interesting play stories from your students as well in the next semester.
Absolutely.
Well, I would like to ask an extension to that also. I mean, sir, like in movies also, we for a long time we could see that very well-known public spaces became the backdrop in various movies to depict that space itself. To understand that, okay, this is a certain space, those public spaces were used.
Yes.
But right now, it's something that I am wondering, is it becoming the opposite? Like, what
green screen, the green screen shooting styles taking over. So you basically shoot all in a studio and then superimpose a picture behind the actors, right? That's what you're saying? Or?
No. I'm saying the opposite, as in the places which are being shown in the movies are becoming public spaces. They are being visited too. They are
exactly. Yeah, that happens. I mean, so for example, what ZNMD does is it does not make public spaces where they didn't exist.
Yeah.
The public spaces did exist for sort of a European audience. It's just that it brings them to our attention, and then we crave to have our sort of holiday there as well.
Like in the case of Dharavi, like tourists, now it's like a tourist destination.
But not before Gully Boy. In fact, it has been
before.
Even before.
Yeah, even before. But that is through a lot of, I feel there are a lot of romanticization of the Dharavi has happened even before Gully Boy.
Well, I think that romanticization was necessary because a lot of NGOs that were working there, they needed to get funds from the foreign agencies, and so they had to create a picture of it. They had to create tourism around it, and I think Gully Boy has a scene where the whole tourist scene as well. If you remember, So she's mocking it actually.
Yeah.
But that's the need to. How do you monetize a project otherwise? You got to romanticize it and call it exotic for a foreign audience, and they all come in crowds to look at it, and they pay a price for it. So I think I remember that there was each tour costed around if you were shooting there, if you were carrying a camera, it was 400 rupees more than the normal price. So yeah, that's the kind of prices that you have to pay when you go around a tour in Dharavi. And that's how people fund their public projects. I think it's called for. It's okay. It's a little bit of romanticization for money doesn't hurt. I mean, I'm sorry, my views are a little commercial on that front. I mean, if it's helping Dharavi, why not?
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, this is Manju here. My question, not exactly a question, just because you're discussing about how movies have been depicting, let's say in Indian cinema, the public places. My query is that recently we are seeing a lot of celebration of the uninteresting middle class.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would like to know your opinion, because I see like last 7-8 years, 5-6 years, we are celebrating mid-towns. We are celebrating places which were not really, those flashy backdrops, and we are also celebrating the ordinary street.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how do you think is it going to help in terms of creating a better experience on ground for these streets because they are being, coming into limelight? Do you think that the reverse process will also happen?
So if I get your question right, first of all, yes, your observation's on point. A lot of we've actually shifted our focus to small town, mid town characters, right? So Lucknow is kind of suddenly the hot favorite as far as shooting is concerned. A lot of films are being shot in Lucknow, in Havelis, around the villages and all that. Gulab Sitab was one such example, but there's so many short films as well as feature films that are being shot. Lahore Confidential. I don't know where. No, Lahore Confidential was shot in Calcutta. Actually, it will release now. So
Yeah, just to extend to your observation, for example, Lucknow has a lot of heritage.
Yeah.
Agra has a lot of heritage. There are still places or cities or let's say buildings or a character that you can show. But I have still seen going one step down, like maybe a town in Bihar, maybe a town in, I mean, absolutely uninteresting places
yes,
that I mean, in a usual sense, we would call them uninteresting, but they are being celebrated in cinema on screen. And my being from planning and background and stuff, my observation or my query is basically that once such a thing starts happening in movies, is it possible that our attention goes there and we actually are able to either improve upon those places, those experiences somehow, because people are now looking at it. They are in the limelight, whether it is for the good reason or for the bad reason. For example, the Dharavi example you said, for for good or bad, it is actually a drain.
right.
And in real life, can that be improved? Can that be covered? Like, we will deal with those issues on ground, and not the visual interpretation of it. So I am taking my thought in reverse, that you portray something, let's say, in a movie or celebrate it or show it to the world. Is it possible that then once it comes into attention, something is done about it?
So there are two things that happen. So the one example could come from Lagan. So soon after Lagan was made or released, I think, or maybe it was just made, it hadn't been released. There was the earthquake in Kutch, right? And the entire film crew kind of were the first one to run. I don't remember exactly, but I'd heard in an interview that they supported the villages that they had shot in, at least those villages and villagers they supported immensely, and also in the task of building the city back, or the village back. So a lot of support did come from Ashutosh Kavarikar Foundation, or I don't know if it's fair to call it foundation, but whatever he was running at that point of time. So the makers of Lagan did kind of contribute to the rebuilding of the city in a big way. So that really happens. But also what happens is that there is certain ownership that the locals start taking. कि ये film यहाँ shoot हुई थी और ये hit हुई. So which means that there is a lot of pride, local pride that gets associated. This is a place where this particular scene was shot, and suddenly it becomes a spot, and so it becomes a part of your popular culture, and everyone start to identify. Now, I don't know whether it will immediately help you cover that drain or clean that drain, but it definitely sparks an interest in having a conversation around that place. And one more that conversation happens, probably someone will take it up, or someone, maybe not immediately, but someone will take it up. But having said that, I also know that filmmakers are really guilty of destroying these places. So I've heard the story that Mira Nair was shooting a movie in a village, sort of in Khajuraho and in the Mahal, and she, for one particular scene, she needed all the walls to be red, and she painted this heritage site red and left it like that. She didn't even bother. I don't know. Nobody knew what kind of paint she used, but whether she took permissions or not. This is a story that we had heard, that she'd ruined the place and she'd left. So filmmakers are very, very guilty, and I think they need to be also made aware that, look, I know that you're using it as a film backdrop, but it's an actual place and you can't destroy it, only even if it's merely painting it. You can't just use today's colors on a heritage site and assume everything would be all right. So you need to consult. But the key is in having conversations, in making it a point of conversation, and the more the conversation happens, more the interest will retain, and more the interest will retain, someone or the other will take it up at some point of time. So we can be optimistic about it, although I haven't personally experienced it in my life at all. but I can be optimistic about it. That conversations would lead to making a difference. I don't know if it answers the questions, Manju.
Yeah, it does totally. Thank you, and I agree to the T. Yep.
Thank you.
I have one more observation and query for Dr. Kaushik. I was really moved by your, observations. You brought in the gender aspect into the public places, and especially in the utilities. Totally understand and totally agree to the part that we lack in this kind of infrastructure, especially for women, and especially where we are away from the urbanized areas, maybe highways and stuff like that. Just wanted to know more from you as to did you after your experience that you mentioned how the aspect of visualization, let's say some of the users were not really reading the signs and all. Did you get engaged in at any point in terms of, let's say, with the help of photography or iconography, or where language is not used to sort of, or segregation aspect, how it can be done, the public places can be segregated using some sort of visual elements for people to use them better?
I have done one experiment with the government of West Bengal, and thank you so much for appreciating the work. So thank you. I have done one particular experiment with government of West Bengal. Yes, with kind of iconography, as you mentioned that in Gangasagar Fair there are the usual the Shahi Snan, and during the footfall there are a lot of people who are coming usually are the non-VIPs and coming from different corners of India, mostly from the villages, the Dehatis and all those people. So there are actually, if you are there are actually 5 entrances. So it is obviously sometimes very much impossible for them to, in between that, one particular incidents that I still remember, that the first encounter with the Gangasagar Mela is that I have seen that there are 140 people together and there is one flag in between. That's a red flag. So even the people don't know that who is that guy. They only know that that's the flag and I have to follow it. Right. And that's a problem with the administration also, that a bus can accommodate only 72 people. And they can't go, that in 2 buses. They want to go in one bus because that one particular bus will carry that particular flag. Right. So sometimes there are, that people who are, that separated from that group. So how do they find them? So usually we have seen that there are, the entrances have the gate number 1, gate number 2, gate number 3, gate number 4, gate number 5. But it came to my mind and I told, there are a few friends of mine who are there in managing this Sagar and in the government of West Bengal there. So I told them, can we use some kind of signs or icons so that these people can tell when they are, telling this, that particular booth that I am standing here. So instead of, they don't know 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever maybe, but they will easily identify one particular thing. So they told me that, gave us some suggestion. कुछ एक suggestion बता, हम लोग फिर implement करते हैं. So that came to my mind. These people are coming from the villages. So probably cattles are probably the most, that common things for signs. So we, in 2018, the government put 5 particular entrances with 5 different icons of cat. Like one is there with the cow, one is there with the, hen, one is there with the goat, kind of a thing. And they are referring, whenever someone is, missing, they are referring that I'm standing at the entrance where the goat is there. Okay, or I'm standing, or I'm here, I'm missed out from the entrance where is a cow in front of us. So that happened actually, and that actually helped some kind of thing. But yes, I'm not a particular person, probably, that the experience I don't have like the Jitendra or Dipti have, but that's one particular encounter that I have, and I just shared that idea with the government, and I'm glad that they accepted, and that's still going on actually. So that's only one thing that I tried. And secondly, as you said, that this particular project which I'm actually working on with this inequality and the public toilets, I think that I'll definitely in some time I'll publish it as a book or something, or will present to the government or something, so that if any action, we leave with a hope. So as we leave the hope in 2020, and we'll leave definitely the 2021. So I believe that if something, my work will, give some sort of impact and create some impact to some change, then that's the only success or the achievement that I'll have through my work. That's all.
Thank you, Kaushik, and thank you, Manju, for your very, very investigative and very thoughtful question, and pointing out, Kaushik, very well the need for such kind of interventions in our public spaces. This conversation can go on for long, but I think we are coming to the close of the session now. I would like to thank Kaushik, Jiten, and Dipti for sharing their stories, experiences, and learnings with us. With this, we come to the end of the series of special place storytelling sessions based on 4 pertinent themes around public spaces. From the next session, we enter into a very interesting and engaging phase of storytelling around public spaces as part of the Festival of Places 2021. We are happy to share that we have received an encouraging response to our call for entries for Place Story 1.0, Exploring Memory in Places, from young researchers, students, and scholars. All the participants have put in tremendous effort in weaving together a 20 minutes video around public spaces in our cities and towns with the theme of exploring memory in places. I am personally very deeply touched by the sensitivity and understanding demonstrated by the participants, and thank each one of them for their creativity, ideation, and efforts. The next Place Story session, titled The Ruins of Hauskhas, is scheduled for 10 January 2021 from 5 p.m. onwards. Our storyteller for the session, Ms. Arunima Agarwal, will be weaving her story around the ruins of Hauskhas, a landmark urban space in Delhi, and will explore the plethora of spaces that the complex has to offer and how people over time have engaged with the spaces in their own ways. The subject experts for the session, Ms. Rashmi Baluja Tandon, architect, urban and regional planner, Professor Vastu Kala Academy, and Ms. Nidhi Batra, development practitioner, founder, Seheriti Development Practices, will expand the narrative around Hauskhas and reveal the multiple dimensions of the place. The session is going to bring forth some very interesting experiences, memories, and interpretations of Hauskhas. So stay tuned for our upcoming Play Story. The registration links for this next session will be shared shortly. Once again, I personally thank each one of you for your participation and support to the Festival of Places. Wishing all of you happiness, health, and peace in the new year 2021, and look forward to meeting all of you again next Sunday, same time, same place. Till then, stay safe and stay happy.